Good morning to you. Mark Stout with HurricaneTrack.com here with your hurricane outlook and discussion. It is Monday, the 19th of July, 2021. Let's take a look at the week ahead. What's going on across the tropics? Well, in the Atlantic basin, it's what's not going on across the tropics. Nothing expected over the next 5 days. And if we are really lucky, nothing for the rest of the month. The suppressed phase of the Madden-Julian oscillation is really holding its own out there, not allowing for much in the way of upward motion. We do have some tropical waves. I'll show you that in just a minute. They are out there, but they don't have much of an opportunity to develop despite warm enough sea surface temperatures. I'll show you that too. In the eastern Pacific, we have Felicia and Guillermo out here, well off the coast of Mexico. There's the Baja, Cabo San Lucas area. So these are far enough away that they won't generate much of any impacts at all. Maybe some swells will emanate out from these two systems. Felicia was, even though it was a ferocious hurricane, at one time a strong Category 4, it was very small in its aerial coverage, and it takes a lot larger wind field to generate powerful swells that can emanate out all the way up to, say, Southern California. It doesn't mean there weren't any generated, but these smaller tropical cyclones have a harder time doing so. So these will both move away from the Mexican coastline even more so. And Felicia there, let's just take a look at the track map, going well to the south of the Hawaiian island chain here, several days away as it begins to dissipate over cooler waters and a more stable atmosphere out there. So no worries if you're heading out to Hawaii over the next few days. All right, so looking at everything here in the Western Hemisphere, we'll start on the western extent of the GOES 16 satellite animation, courtesy of Tropical Tidbits. Here is Felicia, already feeling the cooler water, maybe some shear, and just overall less favorable thermodynamic environment for it, and is starting to fall apart. Larger system here to the east is Guillermo. It too, not very well organized and not too robust in its overall structure and intensity. And it doesn't really matter because it's far enough away from land that it won't be a problem. Check this out. This is the North American monsoon in full swing out here in the desert southwest, coming up out of Sonora in Mexico, the Sonoran Desert region. And I'm going to be heading out there on August 1st for several days to do some observation and reporting and documentary work. And I'll talk more about that later. But this is going to hold on for maybe a couple more weeks, if not longer. Well, it better, because I'm heading out there August 1st. But it's good to see the moisture out there. They really, really need it. And look at this. Got this stalled front down here in the deep south. More rain in places that you just don't need it. I was reading on Facebook and Twitter from some of my friends about the ridiculous amounts of rainfall, as an example, in Mississippi. Just crazy. And so as we get closer to August, September, and beyond, I'm going to tell you what, this area down here, you can just forget it. If you have a hurricane or a tropical storm or even a depression that doesn't get in and out in a hurry, we're going to have some big flooding problems. Something we will address later. Don't want to alarm you too much, but when you have this moisture in the ground like that with all this excessive rainfall, it does begin to make you worry a little bit about the future, because the peak season is coming sooner rather than later. All right, so out in the deep tropics, really nothing going on. Look at that interesting line right there, just the way the clouds set up down there, this boundary kind of stuck in place. I thought it was kind of cool looking. Looks like a little filament or something like that. We do have a fairly active tropical wave out here in the Atlantic to the southwest of the Cabo Verde Islands, another piece of energy coming off of Africa itself. But look at this grayish cloud cover sort of color here. It is, for the most part, clouds, the stratocumulus deck, as we call it. That's very indicative of stable air. Anytime you see that, that's drier, stable, more stable air, a lack of deep convection in there. And so you're not going to get any development out here that's appreciable with that kind of a pattern in place. All of these features will just generally make their way to the west, and I don't see them developing in the computer models. I'll show you that in just a moment, at least from the GFS. Caribbean is generally clear, just some brisk trades moving through all the way through the Western Caribbean, and the Gulf is mostly clear as well. All right, so another way to look at this, just to kind of help prove the point, Not much energy bundling down in the deep tropics here. This is the 850 millibar vorticity chart that I show you often. We'll use white to highlight it better. Nothing really congealing, that's the word I'm looking for, coalescing, aggregating, whatever. None of the energy bundling down in the deep tropics. You got to look way over here to the eastern Pacific. There's Guillermo, and that is what we look for, and we don't see that down here. There's that one tropical wave trying to bundle up, but it is fighting against climatology, and the background state, what we call the intra-seasonal state, is just not favorable right now. But a month from now, you bet, probably going to be a different story. And here's something that's a different story. I show you this often, especially in the off-season. The Southern Oscillation Index, this measurement of the difference between the pressure in Tahiti and Darwin. And lately, this has really been on a tear, a pretty substantial rise over the last several days to a couple of weeks. I mean, look, we were on a downward phase for the most part in the springtime here in the early summer, and now it's just gone up and up and up, so that even the 90-day here is approaching levels that begin to resemble the La Nina state. Typically, when this is at 7 or higher, the Bureau of Meteorology talks about, especially when it is sustained, that is more indicative of a La Nina state, and when it's -7 or so sustained, that's more of an El Nino state. So all of the index numbers here are positive. I mean, the 30-day is just the highest it's been in a long time for several months at 12 today. And again, the 90-day up there, we can just round it up and call it 6 because it's probably heading there sooner than later. And then the daily contributor between the measurements of the pressure in Tahiti and Darwin at 8.8 for today. What does all of this mean? Well, it helps us to understand the pressure pattern out here in the Pacific. You have a lower pressure. In fact, let me just go over here and see if I can grab. We'll do the global. Oh, that is perfect. I love the internet sometimes. So typically, this is an oversimplification, but when the SOI is nice and high, your air pressure over here is going to be lower than it is over in the eastern Pacific. And as we know, pressure on the Earth moves from high to low, and so you get a nice steady trade wind, not burst, but just the overall circulation pattern favors strengthening trades across the tropical Pacific here, and you get that La Nina, and you can see that now starting to come back ever so slightly in the tropical Pacific. Now let's go back to the map that I was showing you, and by the way, that's what the SOI helps to show, is when it is positive. That's not what I wanted. I want the anomaly. There we are. So when it's positive, we get these stronger trade winds blowing this way, and that's what we're seeing. And now we're starting to see more in the way of negative anomalies showing up here, especially out in what we call the Nino 3.4 area, cooling off the Pacific. The Atlantic, marginally warmer than average, especially in the deep tropics here, way down in the lower latitudes, even more so. This is interesting, very, very warm, very, very warm up in the northwest Atlantic. That could be an interesting factor as we get into the heart of the season. And the Gulf of Mexico ebbing and flowing, a lot of that heavy rain running off into the Gulf, creating, disturbed weather down there, thunderstorm complexes, the fresh water on the surface helps to keep the Gulf just a little bit cooler. But make no mistake, it is definitely warm enough for hurricanes, and intense hurricanes at that. This is interesting in animation over the last month or so. Notice here how things have definitely gone from kind of a warm look at the end of June. Now, as we got into July, look at those colder anomalies starting to show up there. The progression towards a La Nina is underway, and I think we're going to see that by the fall. Most of the guidance indicating that. And the Climate Prediction Center, the Bureau of Meteorology, pretty much anybody that follows this can see the signs that we're heading towards a La Nina pattern. In the meantime, the Atlantic Basin, generally speaking, warmer than average, pretty much where it matters, not exceedingly so. So we probably won't have 30 named storms this year, but this area in the deep tropics and the western Atlantic, that's where it matters, because this is where everybody lives, is over here. Well, we got some people at the Cabo Verde Islands we don't want to forget about. But water temperatures are plenty warm where they need to be. and it's a matter of how much above or below average, I guess, once something really gets going. I think the pattern's still there for it to be a very active season, especially starting in about a month, maybe less, maybe more, we'll see. Certainly not over the next couple of weeks. This is the GFS from last night's run. And I'm just going to scroll through and show you. Hopefully you know what you're looking at. I'll just show you real quick. Let's use blue to outline it. This is the east part of the United States, just to show you real quick. There we go, Florida and around the Gulf, Mexico and Central America, the north coast of South America. This is a big old subtropical ridge sitting out there. That is a tropical wave down at the 5,000 foot level anyway. And this is the west coast of Africa. Now, can you remember all that? I'll take it away. Let's scooch this out and just go out to 2 weeks. Again, I can do this when there's nothing out there because it doesn't upset people. It's amazing how that works, isn't it? If you had a huge hurricane developing after day 10, people would get all mad. Oh, why are you showing that? It's so far out in time. There's one there in the eastern Pacific. You see it right there? That's the signature. That's the thumbprint, the fingerprint, if you will, of what we look for. That is way out at days 9 and 10 or so. And, you know, whatever. Probably will have something down there. That's a pretty active area all of the hurricane season mostly, even when it's not favorable in the Atlantic. But you get the idea. Nothing really developing. There's a nice tropical wave there that may or may not really be there at 294 to 300 hours out. But my point is there's nothing to be concerned with. These tropical waves come off, and you can see this one right here. Very easy to spot. That's at 114 hours out. Let's just move it out and make it an even 5 days. That will approach the islands and, you know, bring some showers and storms and a wind shift, but that's about it. It's nice and quiet, and that's the way we like it. I get to enjoy some vacation time with my family where I am now, and you all don't have to worry about hurricanes, and maybe you can go on vacation, do some preparedness stuff if you want to. Whatever, you know, it's just a nice quiet time because it's coming. August and September, October are absolutely going to be busy. There's no doubt about it. Now, where they end up, I don't know. That's what we're all here to find out together. Hey, just reminding you, I've got this podcast that I do every day. I've only missed a couple of them. I think I slept in one time and just forgot. But a pretty good track record overall. It's called Hurricane Season, the podcast. It is short, to the point, like a little digest of what I'm looking at for the day ahead. It's almost always going to be available in the morning, fairly early, relatively speaking. I guess that depends on what your definition of early is. But anyway, it's Hurricane Season, the podcast, available anywhere that you get your podcasts. And subscribe, share, tell people about it. And especially when things get active, it'll be a really good way to keep you up to date on what I'm looking at. And then we do this, the Hurricane Outlook and Discussion, in the afternoon. Usually I'm doing this one in the morning because I got to get out of the hotel here with my family and enjoy the vacation. So yes, Hurricane Season, the podcast in the morning, Hurricane Outlook and Discussion later in the day, and that is available, of course. Let's just make sure I got everything ready here to highlight. On YouTube, that's the Hurricane Outlook and Discussion. We're on Facebook. CJ is our main Facebook guy. Thanks, CJ, for keeping Facebook updated for us. And I update our Twitter often, especially when there's something out there. You can reach me via email. And we are crowdfunded by awesome people from all over the world, helping to develop the future of all of this at Patreon. If you don't know what Patreon is, check it out. It's an app and a website that allows you to crowdfund and even help shape the future of content that matters to you. All right, that is it from me. Have a great rest of your Monday. I'll be back later in the week to talk about, whatever. I'm sure something will pop up. And more so about that monsoon that I'm going to go out to check out, and the drought conditions, and the fact that the desert Southwest does see the remnants of tropical cyclones. I want to discuss that as well. And so thanks to our crowdfunding, I'm going to head out there on August 1st. I'll talk about that a little later in the week. All righty. You guys have I already said that. Great rest of your Monday. Thanks for tuning in and giving me a little bit of a piece of your day. I do appreciate it. I am Mark Sudduth for HurricaneTrack.com. We'll talk again later in the week.